Lieutenant Emma Blackwood jolted awake in her quarters aboard the RSS Maternal Instinct, her heart pounding against her ribs. For a moment, she could have sworn she heard Madison's cry. But that was impossible. Her daughter had been gone for 6 months, lost in the terraforming disaster on New Eden. The digital display on her wall showed 300 hours, casting a pale blue glow across her small quarters. The sound came again, but this time she recognized it wasn't from her dreams. It was coming from her research terminal, which was emitting a soft, pulsing tone that seemed to resonate with something deep in her chest. Emma threw off her covers and moved to the station, her bare feet silent against the cold metal floor. "Computer, analyze anomalous frequency," she commanded, her voice still rough from sleep. The holographic display sprang to life, showing waveforms she'd never seen before in her 15 years as a xenobiologist. The signal violated every known pattern of alien communication they'd documented. Signal origin: bearing 227.4 by 18.9, approximately 2.4 light-hours from current position, the computer reported. Frequency pattern contains embedded harmonics consistent with distress notifications from 17 known species. However, primary carrier wave is... The computer paused, something it rarely did. Unknown. Emma's fingers flew across the haptic interface, breaking down the signal's components. There was something about it, something that made her stomach twist, with an instinct she thought she'd buried along with Madison's memory capsule. The waveform pulsed in a pattern that was hauntingly familiar. It mimicked the neural patterns of a human infant in distress. "Bridge, this is Lieutenant Blackwood," she called over the comm. "I'm picking up something unusual in Sector 7. "Acknowledged, Lieutenant." Captain Rivera's voice came back, irritated at being disturbed during the night shift. "Submit your report through proper channels and—" "Sir," Emma interrupted, knowing she was violating protocol but unable to stop herself. "The signal. It's alive. And it's dying." A pause. "Explain." Emma sent the data to the bridge. The frequency patterns match infant distress signals. But there's something else. The signal's degrading, showing signs of biological entropy. Whatever's sending it, it's fighting for survival. "Lieutenant, need I remind you that after the New Eden incident, you were assigned to this research vessel on probationary status." The captain's voice was careful, measured. "Your emotional involvement in that situation has nothing to do with this," Emma cut in, even as her hand unconsciously touched the locket containing Madison's last neural scan. "Captain, I stake my commission on this. That signal isn't just random space noise. It's a child's cry for help." The bridge fell silent. Emma could almost see Captain Rivera weighing his options. She was still the fleet's leading xenobiologist, probationary status or not. Her research on neural harmonics in non-terrestrial species had opened up 3 first-contact situations. "Ma'am." A new voice cut in. "Lieutenant Chen from Astrometrics. The signal's origin point, it's coming from the VIX theory exclusion zone." Emma's blood ran cold. Everyone knew about the VIX theory. The crystalline warriors who had destroyed an entire UN battle fleet for straying too close to their breeding grounds. First contact protocols specifically forbade any approach to their territory. "Absolutely not," Captain Rivera said firmly. "Lieutenant Blackwood, log your findings and return tow." The signal spiked suddenly, its pattern changing. On Emma's display, the waveform twisted into something that made her heart nearly stop. She'd seen that pattern before, in her own research. It was almost identical to the brain waves of a human mother responding to her child's distress. "Captain," Emma said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "What if we're not picking up a distress signal? What if we're picking up both sides of a conversation? A child crying out, and a mother searching. And what if we're the only ones who can hear it?" The silence that followed felt as vast as space itself. "Shuttle launch protocols strictly prohibited," the computer announced as Emma hurriedly pulled on her EVA suit. "Warning, Gravitational shear from gas giant exceeding safety parameters. Through the shuttle's reinforced viewport, she could see why. The moon below them was being literally torn apart, its surface cracking under the massive tidal forces of the orange gas giant that dominated the horizon. Another unauthorized override. Another warning light silenced. Emma knew she was burning the last of her career's goodwill, but the signal's degradation left no time for proper channels. This is actual career suicide. You know that, right? Dr. Marcus Reed said from the pilot's seat, his dark fingers dancing across the controls as he fought to keep them stable. Despite his words, he'd volunteered for this unauthorized rescue mission, the moment Emma had shown him the signal analysis. Even if we survive, we'll be lucky to end up monitoring bacterial samples on Europa. Noted, Emma replied, checking the signal strength on her handheld. Take us down to that ridge. The readings are strongest there. The shuttle bucked as they descended through the moon's thin atmosphere, chunks of rock and ice floating past them in defiance of normal gravity. The gas giant's pull was literally pulling the small moon apart, creating a scene from the apocalypse. There, Emma pointed to a glint of something that didn't belong among the natural destruction. Something crystalline, catching the orange light of the gas giant. Reed brought them down on a relatively stable shelf of rock about 50 meters from the anomaly. Emma was halfway out the airlock before the landing struts had fully deployed. Surface gravity 0.3 G. Reed called after her. And we've got maybe 20 minutes before this whole shelf breaks apart. Emma acknowledged with a wave, already bounding across the broken landscape in low-gravity leaps. As she got closer, the crystalline structure resolved itself into something that stopped her in her tracks. It was an escape pod, but like nothing humanity had ever designed. It seemed to be grown rather than built, its surface faceted like a diamond but organic in its overall shape, and it was pulsing with light from within. Reed, she breathed into her comm. Are you seeing this? Seeing it, not believing it, he responded. Emma, that's Vic's Theritech. We need to go. Now. But Emma was already reaching out toward the pod's surface. The moment her gloved hand made contact, the crystal seemed to respond, its surface becoming temporarily transparent. What she saw inside made her forget how to breathe. Curled in what looked like a crystalline amniotic sac was an infant Vex Theri. Its body was covered in iridescent feathers that shifted colors even as she watched, its partially formed crystal exoskeleton cloudy and malformed. Most striking were its eyes. When they fluttered open at her touch, they seemed to contain swirling galaxies of their own. And it was dying. Her suit's sensors confirmed what her human instincts were screaming. The infant's biosigns were degrading rapidly, its crystal matrix becoming increasingly opaque, a sign of severe systemic failure in Vex Theri physiology, if their limited research was correct. Reed, she called, her voice tight. Get the shuttle as close as you can. We're taking it with us. Have you lost your mind? Reed's voice cracked. That's a Vex Theri infant. They destroyed an entire battle fleet for getting close to their young. If its parents find us, it'll be dead in hours if we leave it. Emma cut him off, already working to interface her suit's medical systems with the pod's crystal surface. And I'm not losing another child. Not when I can do something about it. The ground shuddered beneath her feet as another piece of the moon broke away. Above them, through the thin atmosphere, she could see the maternal instinct beginning emergency maneuvers. They detected something. Emma. Reed's voice was deadly serious now. Long-range sensors are lighting up. Something big just dropped out of FTL at the system's edge. Multiple signatures, coming in fast. The infant in the pod stirred, its feathers rippling with weak pulses of light that matched the degrading signal they detected. Its eyes found Emma's through her faceplate, and in that moment, she knew there was no other choice. Then we better hurry, she said, already working to secure the pod for transport. The medical bay's quarantine field hummed with enough power to contain a small nuclear explosion. Emma stood on the inside of it, ignoring the growing crowd of officers and security personnel gathering on the other side. Her focus remained fixed on the crystalline pod now interfaced with their medical equipment, its surface still pulsing with weakening light patterns. Lieutenant Blackwood, Captain Rivera's voice came through the intercom, tight with controlled anger. You have violated 17 different protocols, risked this entire ship, and potentially started an interstellar incident. Give me one reason why I shouldn't vent that entire bay into space right now. Emma didn't look up from her work. Because it's murder, sir, and we're better than that. She continued adjusting the medical scanner's frequency, trying to match it to the infant's crystalline biology. Nothing in their database came close to mapping the creature's life signs. Its exoskeleton was growing more opaque by the minute, and conventional treatments were useless. "Damn it," she whispered, feeling the same helplessness that had consumed her on New Eden. The memories flooded back. Madison trapped in the terraforming chamber, Emma watching through reinforced glass as the atmospheric processors malfunctioned. She slammed her fist against the medical console, and a single tear fell onto the pod's surface. The crystal sang. Emma froze, watching as ripples of light spread out from where her tear had landed. The infant's clouded exoskeleton began to clear slightly, responding to something. Computer, analyze the molecular interaction between human lacrimal fluid and the crystalline structure, she commanded, already reaching for a tissue sample kit. On the other side of the quarantine field, she could hear the science officer, Dr. Zhang, shouting for his team to bring additional sensors online. Emma placed her hand against the pod's surface and felt it warm beneath her touch. The infant inside stirred, its feathers rippling with colors she had no words for. Its eyes opened again, and this time they focused on her with an intensity that made her breath catch. Without thinking, she began to hum, the same lullaby she used to sing to Madison. The effect was immediate and spectacular. The pod's surface began to resonate, creating harmonics that transformed her simple melody into something otherworldly. Patterns of light danced across the medical bay, and the infant's exoskeleton started to clear dramatically. "Impossible," Dr. Zhang's voice came through the intercom. "The crystalline matrix is responding to the audio frequencies. But, Lieutenant, the pattern matches human maternal brain waves perfectly. Somehow, your emotional state is catalyzing a biological response in its system." The infant stirred more strongly now, its small form pressing against the thinning wall of its pod. Emma could feel the security team tensing behind her, but she didn't care. She kept humming, watching in wonder as the creature's feathers began to mirror the rhythm of her song. "Sir," Lieutenant Chen's worried voice cut through the moment. "The VX-30 ships have entered the system. 18 minutes to intercept." Lieutenant Blackwood, Captain Rivera's voice was softer now, colored with something like awe. "What exactly have you discovered here?" Emma watched as the infant's partially formed crystal armor began to take on patterns that eerily matched her own neural readings displayed on the medical scanner. "I think," she said slowly, "we've discovered why the VX-30 are so protective of their young. They're empaths, sir. Not just telepathic. They literally require emotional resonance to develop properly." As if to confirm her theory, the infant fully emerged from its protective cocoon for the first time, hovering briefly in the air before her. Its wings, still partly crystalline, caught the light like living prisms, and its eyes swirled with colors that seemed to respond to her own emotions. "It's not just physical protection they need," Emma continued, reaching out slowly as the infant drifted toward her hand. "They need emotional nurturing at specific frequencies to catalyze their growth. Frequencies that, by some cosmic coincidence, match human maternal instincts perfectly." The infant's small hand touched hers, and in that moment, Emma felt something she thought she'd lost forever. The pure, unconditional love of a child reaching for its mother. Behind her, the ship's alert system began to wail. The VX-30 had arrived. 3 VX-30 warships decelerating from FTL. Lieutenant Chen's voice was steady despite the fear evident on her face. Crystal configurations matched their dreadnought class. "We're being scanned." Emma stood in the medical bay, the infant Vix Thury now hovering protectively near her shoulder, its wings occasionally brushing against her hair in a gesture that seemed almost reassuring. On every screen in the bay, threat assessments scrolled past in angry red letters. "Receiving transmission." Communications Officer Torres announced. Sir, it's broadcasting on all frequencies." The sound that filled the ship defied description. It was like crystal being shattered and reformed. 1,000 wind chimes in a hurricane, underlaid with something that made Emma's chest ache. The infant beside her trembled, its feathers rippling with patterns of light that matched the transmission's frequency. "That's not a transmission," Emma whispered, watching the infant's reaction. "That's a mother screaming for her child." Captain Rivera's voice came through the intercom, tense but controlled. "Lieutenant Blackwood, we are about to have 3 Vix Thury dreadnoughts within weapons range. The same species that turned the UN's flagship into cosmic dust for approaching their nursery world. Please tell me you have a plan." Emma reached for the ship's comm system, but Security Chief Alvarez cut in. "Ma'am, surrender protocols are clear. We need tow." "With all due respect," Emma interrupted, her hand finding the infant's crystalline one. "Surrender protocols were written by people who never understood what we were dealing with." She took a deep breath. "Captain, permission to broadcast." A pause. "Granted. God help us all." Emma closed her eyes, remembering the frequency patterns they'd discovered. Then she began to hum, not the lullaby from before, but something deeper, more primal. The infant immediately responded, its crystal matrix resonating with her voice, amplifying and transforming the sound. On the tactical display, the Vix Thury ships suddenly stopped their approach. "They're scanning us again," Chen reported, confusion evident in her voice. "But the pattern is different, more focused on the medical bay." The infant's feathers began to pulse with light, matching a harmonic Emma was creating. Its small form started to glow brighter, and suddenly every crystal surface in the medical bay, from the smallest sample dish to the largest scanner, began to resonate in harmony. "Energy spike," Alvarez shouted. "There." A flash of light filled the medical bay, and Emma found herself face to face with a Vix Thury warrior. The being stood nearly 8 feet tall, its crystalline armor rippling with patterns of barely contained energy. Faceted wings stretched from wall to wall, and its eyes held the same galactic swirls as the infant's, but deeper, ancient. The security field between them crackled and died. Emma didn't move. She kept humming, her hand still joined with the infant's. The warrior's armor pulsed with patterns that seemed to mirror their harmony, and then it began to sing back. The sound was beautiful and terrible, a symphony of crystal and starlight. Emma felt it in her bones, in her very DNA. The song of a mother searching for her child. The infant trembled beside her, its own crystal matrix resonating with both frequencies now. "Translation matrix online," the computer announced. "Partial translation available." The warrior's song resolved into words. "You protect. You nurture. You understand the song." "How?" Emma slowly raised her free hand to her locket, opening it to reveal Madison's neural scan. The crystalline surface caught the light, and the warrior's eyes fixed on it immediately. "Because," Emma said softly, "I lost my own child, and I know what it means to hear them cry across the void." The warrior moved closer, its massive form towering over Emma. Every security officer on the other side of the bay raised their weapons. But instead of attacking, the warrior reached out one crystalline hand and touched the locket, its surface beginning to resonate with the stored neural patterns of Madison's last moments. The infant, still holding Emma's other hand, began to glow brighter, creating a bridge of light between mother and warrior, past and present, human and Vix Thury. Understanding blossomed in the warrior's alien eyes. The maternal instinct's main laboratory had never seen anything quite like this scene. Emma sat cross-legged on the floor, the Vix Thury infant floating near her shoulder, while the warrior mother, who had introduced herself as Song of Ancient Stars, loomed over a holographic display of her child's neural patterns. "Show again," Song of Ancient Stars commanded, her crystalline voice still jarring to human ears despite the translation matrix. "Show how the frequencies change." Emma nodded to Dr. Zhang, who replayed the recording. The display showed the infant's neural patterns from first contact, a chaotic, degrading sequence that suddenly stabilized and strengthened when exposed to Emma's emotional resonance. "See these harmonic patterns?" Emma pointed to a particular sequence. "They match exactly with human maternal brainwaves during moments of nurturing behavior. But look what happens when we overlay the historical VEX theory biological data you provided." A third pattern appeared, this one from centuries ago. The match was undeniable. "Impossible," Song of Ancient Stars whispered, her armor rippling with patterns of distress. "These are the lost frequencies, the ones our ancestors deemed inefficient." The infant chirped, a sound like wind through crystal chimes, and floated to its mother. Their armor resonated together, creating a harmony that made the laboratory's instruments buzz. Emma watched their interaction while her mind raced through the implications. "Your society advanced," she said softly, "but in pursuing technological perfection, you engineered away the very frequencies your young need to survive. That's why your population is declining, isn't it?" The warrior's wings drooped slightly, a gesture Emma had learned indicated deep sorrow. "3 generations," she confirmed. "Our creches grow emptier. Our young fade before achieving crystal harmony. We thought we were becoming stronger." Dr. Zhang cleared his throat. "Lieutenant, you need to see this analysis." He brought up a new hologram, this one showing the infant's crystal matrix development over the past few hours. The resonance pattern isn't just stabilizing the infant's biology, it's actually strengthening it beyond previous VIX theory baseline measurements. Emma stood, walking to the display. The infant followed her, its wings creating tiny rainbow refractions in the hologram's light. "Computer, analyze the frequency pattern from the infant's current crystal matrix against historical VIX theory records." The result made everyone in the room freeze. "It's evolving," Emma breathed. "The exposure to human emotional frequencies isn't just healing it, it's helping it adapt, creating new harmonics that blend both species' strengths." The infant demonstrated this by generating a small force field, something that should have been impossible for one so young. The field sparkled with patterns that matched both Emma's neural waves and its mother's crystal resonance. Song of Ancient Stars moved with sudden urgency, her armor blazing with new patterns. "You understand what this means. Your species, your emotional resonance could save ours, could help us recover what we lost while keeping what we gained." The infant trilled again, floating between them like a bridge between worlds. Emma watched it create another force field, this one humming with a lullaby's rhythm. "There's more," Emma said, pulling up her latest analysis. "Look at the way the harmonics propagate. Your young don't just need the emotional frequencies, they're designed to create deep bonds with their caregivers. Your ancestors didn't eliminate the frequencies because they were inefficient. They did it because they were trying to eliminate emotional attachment itself." "The great rationalization," Song of Ancient Stars confirmed, her voice heavy with understanding. "We thought emotion made us weak. We never realized. It made you whole," Emma finished. She reached out, letting her hand pass through the infant's force field. It responded by harmonizing with her neural patterns, creating a display of light and sound that made even the hardened warrior's crystal armor resonate in wonder. "The question," Emma continued, looking up at the massive warrior, "is whether your people are ready to accept that strength can come from what you once saw as weakness. Are you ready to let yourselves feel again?" The infant drifted to its mother, their crystals singing together in a harmony that needed no translation. In that moment, watching them, Emma realized they weren't just saving a species. They were healing one. The maternal instincts observation deck erupted in chaos as 5 more VIX theory warriors materialized in bursts of crystalline light. Their armor pulsed with aggressive patterns, weapons formed from living crystal humming with deadly energy. At their center stood a figure that made even Song of Ancient Stars drop into a defensive crouch, the High Matriarch of the Vix Theri fleet. Standing her ground, Emma kept the infant behind her. The young one's crystal matrix was still stabilizing, its newly strengthened force fields flickering with uncertainty. "You dare." The High Matriarch's voice shattered two nearby screens, her crystal armor blazing with frequencies that made Emma's teeth ache. "You dare interfere with our young. You dare presume to know better than 10,000 years of evolution." Song of Ancient Stars moved forward, her wings spread in a protective gesture. "High Matriarch, they've discovered something. The human's emotional resonance is weakness." The chamber's temperature dropped as the High Matriarch's armor pulsed with cold light. "We eliminated such inefficiencies for a reason. Your sentiment blinds you. Song of Ancient Stars, step aside." Emma felt the infant tremble against her back, its fear manifesting in discordant crystal harmonics. Without thinking, she began to hum, not just any lullaby, but Madison's favorite. The infant's crystals immediately harmonized, its force field strengthening. The High Matriarch raised her weapon. "Stop." Emma's voice cut through the humming of crystal weapons. "Look at your own readings. Look at what you've lost." She nodded to Dr. Zhang, who projected a hologram showing 3 neural patterns, the infant's degraded state when they found it, its current strengthened matrix, and a historical Vex theory readings from their golden age. "Your evolution isn't natural," Emma continued, standing straighter. "It's artificial selection gone wrong. You chose to eliminate emotion because you thought it made you weak. But look at your population numbers. Look at your dying children." The High Matriarch's weapon wavered slightly. "We are perfecting our species. You're killing it." Emma's voice cracked with maternal fury that made every crystal surface in the room resonate. "A mother's love isn't weakness. It's the strongest force in any universe. Strong enough to make me violate every protocol to save a child that isn't even my species. Strong enough to make Song of Ancient Stars risk everything to find her infant. Strong enough to keep your entire species alive for millennia before you tried to engineer it away." The infant chose that moment to float forward, its crystal matrix now pulsing with a perfect blend of human emotional frequencies and Vexitheri harmonics. It generated a force field that surrounded both itself and Emma, the pattern more complex and beautiful than any the Vexitheri had seen in generations. "Impossible," one of the warriors whispered. "That level of crystal manipulation. At such a young age." The High Matriarch's armor dimmed slightly as she studied the readings. "How?" "Because it's not just about the frequency," Emma said softly, reaching up to touch the infant's crystalline hand. "It's about the bond. Your children don't just need the emotional resonance. They need the connection it creates. They need love." Song of Ancient Stars moved to stand beside Emma, her massive form towering protective over both human and infant. "High Matriarch, I submit myself for judgment, but first scan the child. See how it thrives. See what we could be again." The High Matriarch stood motionless for a long moment, her ancient eyes fixed on the infant's display of strength and control. Finally, her weapon dissolved back into her armor. "Show me," she commanded, but the edge of rage had left her voice. "Show me everything." The infant trilled, creating a cascade of harmonics that made every Vexitheri in the room involuntarily resonate. In that moment of shared frequency, Emma felt it. The first crack in their engineered emotional suppression. The first note of a song they'd forgotten they could sing. She smiled, remembering something her mother once told her. Sometimes the strongest walls are broken not by force, but by a child's laughter. Or in this case, by a crystal song of joy that hadn't been heard in 1,000 years. The Vexitheri crest-ship crystal resonance dwarfed the maternal instinct, its vast crystalline structure catching starlight in ways that made it look like a constellation given form. Emma stood in its central chamber, surrounded by dozens of floating cradles, each containing a struggling Vextheri infant. Their crystal matrices showed the same clouding she'd first seen in her rescued child, now named First Song of Hope by its mother. 83% decline in successful maturation over 3 generations. The High Matriarch's voice was softer now, filled with a grief she was only beginning to let herself feel. We thought we were advancing. Instead, we were. You were doing what any species does, Emma interrupted gently. Trying to evolve. To become better. You just took a wrong turn. Around them, human mothers who had volunteered from the Maternal Instincts crew moved among the cradles. Each had been carefully screened for the strength of their emotional resonance, their capacity for maternal bonding. As they approached the failing infants, the effect was immediate and beautiful. The chamber filled with hummed lullabies, each mother choosing their own special song. The crystalline cradles began to resonate, creating a symphony of light and sound that made the entire chamber feel like the inside of a diamond struck by lightning. Clouded crystal matrices began to clear, infant neural patterns strengthening and stabilizing. First Song of Hope darted between the cradles, its now healthy crystal matrix serving as a bridge between species. It had learned to translate human emotional frequencies into pure Vextheri crystal harmonics, teaching its peers how to accept and integrate the foreign resonance. The numbers are remarkable, Dr. Zhang reported, scanning another infant whose matrix had begun to clear. Their crystal formation is actually stronger than historical records show. The human emotional frequencies aren't just healing them. They're helping them adapt, evolve. Song of Ancient Stars, watching her child lead this revolution, turned to Emma. We thought emotion was chaos. Unpredictable. Dangerous. We never understood it was. The foundation, Emma finished, watching a young engineer from her crew bond with twin Vextheri infants, her doubled lullaby creating complex harmonic patterns in their shared force field. You can't engineer out the core of what makes you who you are. Not without consequences. The High Matriarch drifted closer, her ancient crystal armor now showing patterns that would have been condemned as emotionally compromised just days ago. We have already received 6,000 applications from human mothers willing to serve as emotional anchors for our young. The Federation Council is drafting the first human Vextheri maternal exchange treaty. She paused, her crystals flickering with what Emma now recognized as wonder. Why? Why would they help us after everything we've done? Emma watched as First Song of Hope created a force field around a group of infants, its pattern matching perfectly with the lullaby their human caregiver was humming. Because that's what mothers do. We nurture. We protect. We love. Not just our own children, any child that needs us. A sudden surge of crystal resonance drew their attention. One of the sickest infants, given days to live, had just generated its first force field. Its human caregiver, tears streaming down her face, was already harmonizing with the new frequency, helping the young one stabilize its first creation. Besides, Emma continued, touching her locket, some of us have holes in our hearts that need filling, wounds that can only be healed by having someone to love again. The High Matriarch's armor shifted, revealing her true crystalline form for the first time in centuries. Then perhaps we both need healing. Around them, the chamber filled with the sound of dozens of human lullabies, each one unique, each one carrying the power of a mother's love. The crystal matrices of the Vextheri pulsed in harmony, creating patterns of light and color that hadn't been seen since their species first reached for the stars. They were singing again, these children of two worlds, singing the song of hope, of love, of futures once thought lost now found again. And in that song, both species found something they didn't know they were missing, each other. 1 year later, Emma stood before the crystalline podium in the newly constructed human Vextheri nursery complex on Mars, its vast domes catching the sunset in ways that made the whole structure look like it was built from frozen fire. Behind her, through transparent crystal walls, hundreds of floating cradles pulsed with healthy light, each one containing a Vextheri infant bonded with a human caregiver. First Song of Hope, now nearly adolescent, hovered by her shoulder as she addressed the assembled delegation from 47 species. The young Vextheres crystal matrix had developed in ways that astounded both species, its ability to bridge human emotion and crystalline technology, creating entirely new possibilities for both races. 1 year ago, Emma began, her voice carrying through the chamber's perfect acoustics. We thought we knew what evolution meant. The Vextheri believed it meant shedding emotion. Humans thought it meant advancing despite it. She smiled as First Song of Hope created a force field that amplified her words, adding harmonic overtones that made them feel like music. We were both wrong. True evolution isn't about what you leave behind. It's about what you become together. The chamber's main doors opened, revealing the latest group of human surrogate mothers, each one carefully chosen for their emotional resonance strength. They walked past rows of Vextheri warriors whose armor now pulsed with unashamed patterns of joy and anticipation. Our program has achieved a 100% survival rate among Vextheri young, Emma continued, bringing up holographic data that danced through the air like crystal butterflies. But more importantly, we've discovered something extraordinary. First Song of Hope demonstrated, creating a complex series of force fields that responded not just to crystal harmonics, but to the emotional states of everyone in the room. The display drew gasps from the assembled diplomats. The infants raised with human emotional bonding aren't just surviving. They're developing abilities beyond anything in Vextheri historical records. They're evolving into something new, something that combines the best of both species. Song of Ancient Stars moved forward, her armor now permanently modified to show her emotional states rather than hide them. The human mothers have given us back more than our future, she announced, her voice harmonizing with the crystal chamber. They've given us back our soul. In the nursery behind them, a new mother had just received her first Vextheri charge. The infant's crystal matrix was already beginning to pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat as she hummed a lullaby. The sight made Emma touch her locket, but for the first time, the gesture brought more joy than pain. But perhaps most importantly, Emma said, watching the new pair bond, we've learned that the strongest force in the universe isn't technology or evolution, or even the crystal harmonics that power Vextheri ships. She smiled as First Song of Hope created a small force field in the shape of a heart, its pattern matching the one stored in her locket. It's a mother's love, a love that knows no species, no boundaries, no limits. The High Matriarch herself stepped forward, her ancient armor now modified to include patterns that matched human neural waves. Let it be known, she declared, her voice carrying the weight of centuries, that from this day forward, the Vextheri recognize human mothers as true kin. Our children are your children. Our future is your future. First Song of Hope trilled a note that made every crystal in the chamber resonate, creating a lighthouse beam of pure emotion that could be seen from orbit. In that light, Emma saw everything they'd achieved. Two species healing each other, ancient wounds being mended, new possibilities being born. And in the nursery beyond, 100 lullabies rose into the Martian night, each one carrying the same message in different melodies. Love, like evolution, finds a way, not just to survive, but to transform, to become something greater than the sum of its parts, to become family. Emma touched her locket one last time, then removed it and placed it in a crystal display case. She didn't need it anymore. She had found something better than memories. She had found hope.